What did it cost to live in the time of William Shakespeare? And how does that compare to life today? While we don't know the exact prices he personally paid, historians can estimate what life was like based on records from the time. The Elizabethan era is when William Shakespeare lived. He was born in April 1564 and died April 23, 1616. Shakespeare worked as a playwright, actor, and a shareholder in the theaters like the Globe Theater and the Blackfriars Theater. He made money from writing, acting, and owning parts of the theater, which made him fairly wealthy for his time. Living back then still had the same basic categories that we have today, just way simpler. Housing. Shakespeare grew up in Shakespeare's birthplace and later bought a house called New Place. A house like that cost around £60 or about 1,200 shillings, which shows he was financially successful. When working in London, he likely rented rooms costing about 6 pence to 1 shilling per week, depending on the location. Food was a regular expense. A household would spend about 2 to 5 shillings per week on basic foods like bread, meat, vegetables, cheese, and ale. Food was cheap compared to modern life, but still very important for daily survival. There is also evidence that Shakespeare was involved in buying and storing again. This wasn't just hoarding, but more like managing supplies, since grain prices could rise and fall. Wealthier people sometimes did this to plan ahead or to make profit. Transportation. Most people walked everywhere. Horses were used by wealthier people and cost about 2 to 3 shillings per trip, so it was more of a luxury. Clothing. Clothing was actually pretty expensive. Simple outfits cost several shillings, and nicer fabrics or costumes cost even more. Since Shakespeare was involved in theater, costumes were a big part of the world and were reused by acting companies. Utilities. There were no utilities like electricity or water bills. Instead, people paid for firewood, candles, and water access. These basic needs could cost a few shillings per week. Wealthier households also had servants, who were paid about 10 to 20 shillings per month. Taxes and tithing. People paid property taxes and church tithes, which were about 1/10 of their income. Records also suggest that Shakespeare had issues with unpaid taxes while living in London. Education. Shakespeare's children would not have gone to school like we do today. Education was not free or required. If they attended grammar school, families might pay small fees for books or materials, usually a few shillings per term. Boys often went to apprenticeships, while girls learned household skills at home. Overall, Shakespeare lived a comfortable life, compared to most people in the Elizabethan era. Even though everything cost much less in number, life was still centered around basic needs like food, household, clothing, and taxes. His income from writing, acting, and theater ownership allowed him to live much better than the average person. Even though money worked very differently back then, the same basic cost of living categories still exist today, just in a much more modern world. For the pie chart, I figured these numbers based on this. Food and daily survival, bread, ale, and meat, 30%. Housing, rent or property ownership, 25%. Clothing, expensive due to handmade fabrics, 15%. Servants, common in middle or upper class homes like Shakespeare's, 10%. Taxes and tithes, required church and government payments, 10%. Transportation, mostly walking, horses were costly, 5%. Education, limited and inconsistent access, 3%. Miscellaneous, normal, unpredictable spending, which was 2%. It's an estimate based on historical household priorities and common Elizabethan expenses, since exact budgets from Shakespeare's household do not exist.